This is 15.1.5. There aren't any notes for this section. It's just a worksheet where we go through some factoring riddles. And if you get good at solving these type of riddles, then there's some factoring problems and some things down the road that are going to be much, much easier. This is a really good mental workout here. So let's take a look at example 1. It says find two numbers that multiply to be positive 24 and combine to be negative 10. Now, you'll notice that I wrote down here, it can be really helpful to say the sign along with the number. So I'm going to say this again just like I said it before. So find two numbers that multiply to be positive 24. So I know I don't need to say that, but it's a good habit to be in. And combine to be negative 10. Now I do have to say the negative in front of the 10 if I want it to be that way. So the answers on this one are negative 6 and negative 4, because negative 6 times negative 4 is positive 24 and negative 6 minus 4 is negative 10. Now the question would be, well, how did you come up with those numbers? Well, here's a general technique that works pretty well, and it relies on our ability to factor relatively quickly, or remember what numbers are factors of a particular number. So we start with this number right here. We start with what they need to multiply to be. So they need to multiply to be positive 24. Well, let's ignore the sign for right now. Let's just say they need to multiply to be 24. Well, one set of numbers would be 1. 1 goes into 24 times. So 1 and 24, those two numbers would multiply to be 24, but there's no way we could get them to combine, add or subtract, to be a 10. So again, we're kind of ignoring the sign for right now. And let's do the next one. So 2 would go in here 12 times. Well, let's think about this for just a second. Those would multiply to be 24, and somehow maybe I could make a 10 out of those, because if I subtract those, then that would be a 10. So let's try this. Let's try 2 and 12. Well, if I do 2 times 12, I end up with positive 24, which is what I want here. But if I do 2 plus 12, I end up with 14. So that's the wrong number, okay? So that's not going to work, not going to be able to use 2 and 12. Well, we might think, well, let's try 12 and negative 2. Because if I do that, if I do negative 2 and 12, if I put those together, if I do negative 2 plus 12, I end up with 10. Oh, wait a minute, that's not going to work. I need it to be negative 10. Oh, so let's try this. Let's try 2 and negative 12, okay? So that would be 2 minus 12. That ends up being negative 10. So we've got that part taken care of. But now watch what happens here. If I do 2 times negative 12, I end up with negative 24, and then that's the wrong number there. So that's not going to work. So the only thing that's left with the 2 and the 12 is negative 2 and negative 12. If I multiply those, I get 24, so we're in good shape there. It multiplies to be the right number. But then if I do negative 2 minus 12, I end up with that 14. Okay, so negative 14 like I had over here, positive 14, so that's not going to work. So 2 and 12 doesn't work. So let's do another one. Another pair would be, let's see, 3 goes into 24 8 times. But you can't make a 10 out of a 3 and an 8. So let's see, the next one would be 4 goes in there. Let's see, 4 goes in there 6 times. Well, 4 times 6 would be 24, so we've got that part taken care of. And I could combine those to be a negative 10, so let's check and see. If they were both positive, 4 and 6, I'd have 4 times 6. That checks out. It multiplies to be 24. 4 plus 6, that multiplies to be 10. Okay, so that's not going to work. So here's a little hint. If they multiply to be a positive and combine to be a negative, they've both got to be negative. So negative 4 and negative 6. So negative 4 times negative 6, that's 24. Whoops, make that look right. That's 24, there we go. And then negative 4 minus 6, that's negative 10, and that's kind of the work that we showed down here. So these are the right numbers. So I'm going to change colors, and let's take a look at another one. I need some numbers that multiply to be negative 36 and combine to be negative 5. Well, let's start off with 1 and 36. Okay, there's no way I can make a 5 out of a 1 and 36. Let's try a 2, and 2 goes in there 18 times. Can't make a 5 out of those. 3 and 12. 3 goes into 36 12 times. Can't make a 5 out of those. So let's try the next one. Let's try 4 and 9. Okay, and the only one that would be in the middle is 6 and 6. Okay, so let's try this group right here. Let's try 4 and 9 because they multiply to be 36, and they would somehow we could get them to combine to be 5. Now, they need to multiply to be a negative and combine to be a negative. So let's try this. If they're going to multiply to be a negative, let's try negative 4 and positive 9. Okay, that would be negative 36, and then negative 4 plus 9, that's going to be 5. Okay, so they multiply to be the right thing, but they combine to be the right number, just the wrong sign. Now, a little hint here. If they multiply to be a negative and they combine to be a negative, the bigger one of the two numbers that we're using has to be negative. So if you double check this one right here, if we do negative 9 times 4, that's negative 36. And if we do negative 9 plus 4, we end up with negative 5. So that's the right answer. So we got that one. Okay, let's take a look at another one. This one, I have this one written out so that we actually have to say the words positive and positive right here. So find two numbers that multiply to be positive 20 that combine to be positive 9. So if they need to multiply to be 20, let's start off with 1 and 20. Can't make a 9 out of those. Let's try a 2 and a 10. Can't make a 9 out of those. So 3 doesn't go in there. 4 goes in there 5 times. Well, you can multiply those to be 20 and they combine to be a 9. So we're going to use both the positive ones. So remember, they multiply to be a positive and they combine to be a positive. That means they both got to be positive. Okay, find two numbers that multiply to be negative 6 and combine to be negative 1. So multiply to be negative 6 and combine to be negative 1. So let's do 1 and 6. Okay, they would multiply to be 6, but there's no way I could combine those to be a 1. Let's try a 2 and a 3. Okay, so 2 and 3, we could get those to multiply to be 6, and they're only one apart, so we could get them to combine to be that. Now, again, a little hint here. If they multiply to be a negative and combine to be a negative, the bigger one of the two has to be negative. So if we've got 2 and 3, the bigger one's got to be negative. So let's just double check this. 2 times negative 3, that's negative 6. That part checks out. Let's do 2 minus 3. So combine them together, I get negative 1. That checks out. So we've got our answer there. Now, I'm going to leave you with example number 5. You've got the answer right here. It says find two numbers that multiply to be negative 6 and combine to be positive 1. So stop and think about how this would have to work. If they multiply to be a negative, one of them's got to be a negative, but they combine to be a positive. So the bigger one's got to be a positive. So you've got the list right there. You've got the answer right there. So work through the logic on that one. And then let's take a look at number 1. So on number 1, it says they need to multiply to be positive 12 and combine to be 7. Multiply to be positive 12, combine to be 7. So if they're going to multiply to be a positive and combine to be a positive, they both got to be positive. So this is a relatively easy one, but let's list these out. We could use 1 and 12, but you can't make a 7 out of those. We could do 2 and 6, but you can't make a 7 out of those. So the next pair would be 3 and 4. They multiply to be a positive 12, and they combine to be a positive 7. So we're going to use 3 and 4. All right, so that's the basic idea. Good luck with this. And these are really good mental aerobic problems that kind of give us a little bit of a workout. Really good skill to have in the long run. Thanks.